compLexity COD are back, or did they really even leave? Cole definitely had their hand involved when it came down to RosterMania throughout these past few days, trying to exit the COD scene until Black Ops 4, but officially have found themselves with another Call of Duty team. One thing that I've always liked about compLexity and the Call of Duty community is just that name, right? The mixture between those two organizations, Call of Duty and compLexity, it just works. It's like peanut butter and jelly. It's just like the names suit themselves. Of course, the prior history with compLexity, the run that they made in their past history. It's just a really nice thing to see compLexity continuing to be in the Call of Duty scene, of course, leading up until Black Ops 4, not restarting themselves heading into that game. But as far as the original plan for compLexity, right, their original decision to want to leave the Call of Duty scene involved releasing their entire roster as restricted free agents. And actually, Jason Lake, the CEO and founder, mentioned in a Twitter video that everyone, despite study, actually had been bought out by another organization. However, though, that is not what ends up taking place. Fellow ends up getting his contract bought out by United. Parasite's contract ends up getting bought out by Ghost Gaming. Dashy, however, due to contract issues, ends up staying on the team despite what was said in the video. There were a number of different organizations, which we'll get into, who were involved with Dashy, but it seems as if those talks ended up falling short. And as far as what ends up occurring, who ends up joining alongside the new compLexity roster after losing all three of those players, Steady still remaining a restricted free agent, but they end up actually getting a league spot heading in towards Stage 2. And the way that compLexity obviously manages to do that is by picking up both Ricky and Blastful from Reckless and Center in free agency from Lightning Pandas. And for those who might be a little bit curious, how do they get that qualification spot? Essentially, Reckless ended up competing throughout Stage 1. The way that you hold on to a league spot heading in from Stage 1 to Stage 2 is by having two players who were on that original roster. Ricky and Blastful are in possession of those particular positions. That guarantees them a position in Stage 2. And the major thing, and the way that compLexity really makes out of this fantastic, is that they sell off two players at least, right? They sell off Felony, they sell off Parasite, that's money right there, and they also pick up three unrestricted free agents, I believe. Ricky and Blastful should be free to go. I believe Censor ends up getting taken off of Lightning Pandas and is totally a free agent, nothing restricting him whatsoever, so they get a free league spot, plus they get two players contracts bought out from their prior team. This works out perfectly if you're on the side of compLexity. But as far as the league spot is considered, there was a lot of speculation as to who actually had the spot between Blastful and Bevels. And one of the original Codcast episodes, of course, Nameless's recent podcast, it was discussed and saying that they believe that Blastful actually has the spot, but in the chat, Bevels was ended up saying that he actually has the position. And there was a lot of issues kind of going around as, who's the main factor in the situation? Because if not, Ricky and Decimate then have to compete under the same organization if they want to kind of have that particular league position. It obviously seems now that they have given the spot over to Blastful if he didn't already possess it. I tried actually reaching out to League Ops and did not really get anywhere, didn't really hear anything back. So my personal opinion and what I think actually happened is that Bevels did have the position based off of ruling, and they actually end up giving it over to Blastful because of Bevels' recent retirement. He later becomes the coach of Evil Geniuses, and that's kind of how they go from there. But kind of moving on, right? So they pick up through those three players, and their main star, right, is Dashy. He was He was essentially a restricted free agent, the #1 free agent on the market, and every single team wanted him. Every single team. I mean, Envy were the most interested according to sources, but when I say every squad wanted him, every squad wanted Dashy. Everybody wanted this man on their team to complete their lineup because he looks to be one of the best young guns, or one of the best rising stars in the game that we have. And a lot of players, a lot of even community members as well, have been speculating if he can get like a solid veteran underneath him, if he can get a solid coach, a solid team who can really teach him how to play the game, he could be one of the future, greatest players in the entire game, and really even of all time as well. He has that potential and that possibility. And figuratively, it was like every time I'm sure that Dashy was getting an offer, I'm thinking like literally compLexity like ties a noose around his neck. They're like, okay, like Dashy, that sounds interesting. Like you really want to go over to Team Envious? That's great, but they're not offering us enough money. Oh, you want to go over to E United? You want to go over to Team Caliber? You want to go over, to whatever it really may be? Nice try, Dashy. We're going to bring you back to compLexity. You trying to leave us, man? Why would you try to leave us? We're compLexity. Why would you want to leave this organization? We got a league spot. But every time he tried to leave, right, why don't you come on back here? Essentially is what I think that compLexity was really doing. But if you're in Dashy's shoes, this should be a very frustrating moment for you because you are literally so close to having the spotlight on you with an organization like Team Envious, having that logo on your chest, competing against the best teams in the world. Not that you really aren't with compLexity, but you're guaranteed a top-tier organization. You're guaranteed the spotlight. And for a lot of organizations, they're looking for that star. They're looking for that slaying power. And I feel like Dashy could absolutely provide that for a number of different teams. And I'm sure he probably thinks that himself as well, being that close to being with Team Envious. And it just happens to fall short, of course, speculation arising as to what really caused that. But being that close, it's going to be a very frustrating moment for Dashy. And I think, to be honest, it's great that he's in the league. He has the opportunity to play with some new players and whatnot. But this shouldn't be what Dashy wants, essentially, if you are in his shoes. As far as compLexity's additions, they do, like I said, grab Censor, Ricky, and Blastful. And we've already actually seen a few of these players play on the similar rosters in the past. Censor and Ricky did manage to squad up earlier on in the year under Next Threat, which did not work at all at the time. They both kind of played the similar support-minded position. You had Nagafin and Methods, who were the other two players a part of that team, who really carried the load. And I feel like for this new team, right, in the past, it was a matter of Ricky and Censor playing the exact same position. Both had the same role kind of in mind. Censor more dedicated to that objective/support role. Ricky a little bit more offhand. But to me, as far as this new team is considered, Ricky has got to ignore the objective, has got to ignore the support a lot more, rather, than he's used to, and has to pick it up in kills. But also, along with Censor and Ricky teaming up in the past, you do have Censor, Dashy, and Blastful, who actually all played under Enigma 6 at CWL NOLA. So you have at least 3/4 of the team. 75% of this team has actually already competed so far throughout this year. And I really wanted to break down what was that tournament essentially for that team, because you talk about 75% of the roster. That obviously causes a little bit of, what should be pretty uniform when it comes down to the new Cole team. Of course, like I said, they did play under Enigma 6, and essentially in this situation, you do sub out Ricky and input General. But as far as their tournament run at CWL NOLA, they ended up finishing 0-4 in groups, 5-12 in overall map count throughout that group as well. And granted, they did have a pretty difficult pool to be put into, but it's here nor there. They also ended up taking down Millennium and compLexity in the losers bracket. However, they later got knocked out by Team Envious in a hot 3-0, finishing off with a top 16 placement. Now, along with their placements, I really want to talk about the statistics for this tournament, as far as CWL NOLA is considered. So, going off of the team average of the three players, and then also going off of the sole performance from Dashy, look at some of these numbers. I mean, they are just absolutely insane to see the difference that Dashy was making on the map as far as kills are considered compared to his teammates. So the hardpoint team average between the other three players in hardpoint, like I said, 0.90. Dashy's overall hardpoint, a 1.23. Search and Destroy team average, a 0.79. Dashy's, a 0.98. And Capture the Flag, the team average was a 0.99. Dashy's, a 1.52. The overall team average is 0.91, and overall Dashy's KD, a 1.27. Unreal statistics to just go to show what he was doing on the map compared to his teammates, literally leading by a huge majority as far as the overall kill-to-death ratio is considered. But I understand Dashy's role is meant to pick up kills around the map. I can totally understand that. So let's go and take a look at a few other stats kind of regarding other things, not just always revolved around slang as far as CWL NOLA is considered. Other stats to be looking at, he was second in hardpoint time for his team, and that was time per 10 minutes. He was 2 seconds actually behind Blastful, and Dashy ends up finishing off with 64 seconds as far as time in the hill per 10 minutes, which is pretty decent. It's not amazing, but it's still pretty decent. He was second behind Blastful, and you look at guys like Ricky and Censor, known for the support, known for their objective. It's going to be a question as you see Censor not even in the second place position, not in the first place position where I feel like he should have been. And of course, like I said, you keep in mind General was obviously on this team as well. But to see Dashy in second place behind Blastful, and Censor is nowhere to be found as far as the hardpoint time is considered. Dashy was also third overall in the tournament in respawn KD with a 1.27. The next highest teammate for him was 49th. The next highest teammate after that as far as respawn KD, 62nd. Dashy was also second in Respawn Slayer, which is kills per 10 minutes. He averaged 25.41 kills. His teammate Blastful was 16th. Next highest teammate was 62nd. And I'm not sure if you're also noticing a pattern here, but at least as far as this team previously has worked out, it's been a matter of one guy at the top, Blastful kind of in some ways shortly behind, and the other two players nowhere to be found. I think as far as this team is considered, Blastful and Dash, you're going to have a lot of pressure on their shoulders to really slay for this team. And it could be very rough for this roster at Seattle, which raises a number of different questions. Now, I say that with the uniform that, of course, that was NOLA. We're now heading into Seattle. A few months have passed. Sensor has really improved a lot as of recent, and Ricky has had a fantastic performance most recently at CWL Birmingham. I think the improvements are there, but are they enough, right? I mean, there's been a lot of talk. People have been saying Sensor's the most improved player, at least as of the last few months. Ricky's been playing a lot more solid as well. But when you really look at this team, there's not really a thing where you look at and say, that's where the consistency lies. They're facing off against an E United. They're facing off against the new Envious. They're facing off against the new Rise Nation. Can they really compete consistently in slaying? According to the previous stats, where 75% of the team was already a roster, it didn't occur. And do you think much of a difference is going to be made from adding or losing General, who's known for a slayer in his past? Granted, it's not his best title, but in putting Ricky in that situation, who's pretty much solidly search and destroy minded throughout a lot of his career, known for the objective. Granted, I think Ricky is one of the most underrated players that we have in Call of Duty history. I will deem that for as long as I live, right? But when it comes down to pure slaying, Ricky has never been relied to do that work along with his other teammates, because when you add a guy like Sensor, which I would totally respect what Sensor does on the map, but we kind of talk about his lifespan with this team, he plays the role of support, and essentially he kind of dives into the objective and allows his other teammates to slay. And based on statistics, I don't see Ricky's name at the top. I don't see Blastful's name at the top. And you can't really rely on one slayer to really be getting everything done. So I think as far as this team is considered, I think Doug, aka Sensor, really benefits this team a lot and captures the flag. He frees everyone up to kind of play their roles, to free up for them to kind of do the slaying, which is nice if you have 3 slayers. But I don't see Ricky and Blastful going off consistently in anything but probably search and destroy. This team could be unbelievable search and destroy. This is going to be a team that you really have to worry about in that game mode, and a lot of people have been speculating search and destroy, the most important game mode in World War II for right now. But I think as far as Seattle is considered, this is going to be a test for Sensor. This is going to be a test as far as how he can play in this game. Can he essentially add a role to this roster to where if he plays his position, can the other 3 guys slay consistently? And if you're Doug, you got to be rooting on your teammates. You got to be rooting on Ricky. You got to be rooting on Blastful. Reason being, the other 3 guys aren't going to be dropped, right? You're not going to drop Dashy. You can't physically drop Ricky or Blastful because why? You lose your league spot. That's the reason why this team was picked up. So the only guy on the chopping block is Sensor in this situation. So if you're in Sensor's role, you're hoping that he plays well in the hard point. You're also really rooting on your teammates to have solid slaying performances, because if not, you could get the boot. And it's not necessarily always going to be Sensor's fault. It's just a matter of, can his teammates slay consistently along with Dashy? And I really don't think it's going to happen for this team. I think they have a potential. I think there's definitely a possibility there. But when it comes down to the regular season and as far as the league, right, it wouldn't surprise me if we see them in one of those bottom positions just because they cannot consistently hang at the top. Search and destroy, it's nice to be good at, but I mean, as far as clutching up and game 5 situations, we've already known that clutching up can only last so long.